What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off with data points, we have manufacturing coming out on Monday. Current forecast is 49. Anything above 50 shows more of an expansion. Anything below 50 shows more of a contraction. And I feel like that one data point, the market might actually move higher if it is negative, only because, as what we saw on Friday, the market is really desperately wanting rate cuts. And so ultimately you get that by having somewhat negative data. So I feel like market might move a little bit higher if this comes in negative. So that's Monday. Tuesday, we have jolt numbers, quite a few Fed speakers throughout the week. So that obviously could move the market as well. On Wednesday, we do have ADP employment, ISM services. Thursday, exports imports. So that might be a little bit more of a touchy kind of scenario for Trump, because that is going to be for April numbers. And ultimately when his tariffs first started to really kick in, especially against Canada and Mexico. And then aside from that, on Friday, non-farm payroll and unemployment. These are the companies unveiling their earnings this week. Nothing really crazy that I feel like could move the market. So it is going to be largely the data points as well as Trump. So Friday, we did see a little bit more of an escalation between China and the States. So a lot of people will be looking for that to be more of a calmer kind of scenario. And then aside from that, the market is also going to be pricing in what came out after hours on Friday when Trump did raise the steel tariffs from 25 to 50. So we'll have to wait and see how this all does play out, but it is going to be a pretty volatile week all in all. Specific to SoFi though, there was this. So they do have on June the 4th, so this week, a fireside chat. This was just announced, I believe, on the 30th. So Chris will be talking. Historically, SoFi does go green on these types of days for whatever reason. There's just some weird correlation between that. So it's something, again, to kind of keep in mind. But hopefully they do drop some good news or something along those lines, similar to the last fireside chat when obviously Anthony did mention that there was 10 big deals kind of in the works. Some might come to fruition, some might not. But still, was good information. Market really liked that. So hopefully Chris does drop some pretty good news as well. So let me know your thoughts on that. Only other thing that did come out recently was yesterday. So Saturday was this. So you did have Tanner, Chris, dividend streams, and 𝗪𝗓𝗡. So I think this was a very good discussion talking about SoFi, Robinhood, and I think at the end of the day, the moral of the story is from, again, this might be a little bit more too general of a summarization, but SoFi is a little bit slow to the game. They could be improving on their marketing. Anthony could be doing more interviews, such as with Tanner, 𝗪𝗓𝗡, or whoever else, just to increase their exposure. But SoFi is largely just sitting back and assuming that their data is going to drive the stock price higher, such as Chris. Chris is obviously data-driven investing, very focused on the numbers. But as I even bring up almost every single video, like, I'm not really one of those ones that, yes, the data is very important if you are going to be looking for a solid stock, but 90% of what I bring up is macro data points, other speculative things that is moving the stock price. That is equally as important, and that's exactly what 𝗪𝗓𝗡 did state, that it is just the CEO, just how they handle themselves, how the company handles themselves, perception. And so I do feel like 𝗪𝗓𝗡 definitely did have a lot stronger of an argument. Just Chris and Tanner seem to be just more like, hey, look at the data. This is where eventually the stock price will value and kind of move SoFi higher because of the data. So again, I feel like different investing styles, very good debate. Got to give a shout out to all of them. Definitely very good stuff for that. So what was your viewpoint on that for those of you that did kind of tune in? Like I said, a lot of good points, but I do tend to agree with a little bit more 𝗪𝗓𝗡 just on his perception of SoFi, right? Because you can't just keep saying almost every single time that, hey, SoFi is being manipulated down. It's how they're being perceived. And this is why, I guess, how they were arguing how SoFi, I guess, is only having a banking multiple, not a tech multiple. So it's kind of an interesting type of thing. But going into this upcoming week, 13.68% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 148.53 million shares. So in my opinion, I feel like the shorts might actually be a little bit more active towards the later data. So that would be on Tuesday and Friday. And obviously with it being potentially for Friday, they might get a little bit more active based on this right here. So if SoFi was to get close to, let's say, that 1350, 14 or possibly 1450, then you might see them get a little bit more active because there is 10,000 at that 1350, 15,000 at that 14, and then 9,000 at 1450, and then as well 11,000 at that 15. So shorts might wake up a little bit during that period. So something again to keep in mind. With it closing at that $13.30 on Friday, that does mean that ultimately the 1350 and above all did expire worthless. So that's kind of the downside of options. So you have ultimately, what was that, 8,000 at that 13. So that's not going to cause any bump up in the stock price come Monday. So something to kind of keep in mind. With it right now though, at 1330, it is trading right now between these 2 points. So this R1 and the pivot. So 1323 is going to be a strong support, followed by 1280. Flip side, 1366, and then 1392 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points. On the actual chart itself, over the last couple of trading days, it was really pounding at that ALMA to really move higher. Another element to watch for is that 100-day moving average, so 1351. It did actually attempt to break above that on May the 29th. But unfortunately, circumstances didn't really play out as so the market was kind of pulling it back, which was rather unfortunate. But that is pretty much the fine line between that and most likely a $15 kind of move. So a lot of big data points coming out this week could be in either direction, right? It is all about perception, as I mentioned, what the market is feeling about these data points and what that will do to consumers, and thus through consumers affect SoFi. It is just a weird domino effect. It happens all the time, but that's normal, right? Aside from that though, so just watch for that. If for whatever reason the data is negative, we have a very strong support system around that 1238. So both that 50 and also 200-day moving averages are at 1238. So that's pretty much diamond support. So that's kind of a good thing. So as far as right now, I'm relatively optimistic going into this week that the market is going to kind of like a lot of the data, and hopefully Trump wanting to really move the market higher will come out with some good news. Just most likely Monday, you might have a little bit of extra volatility as the market does price in that new steel increase in tariff. So again, you might see a retest potentially of that 1323, or it might be momentarily broken below that. But I think all in all for this week, we will be landing between this R2 and this R1. So between 1392 and 1366. Of course, if we get some good solid deals between the States and China, as well as possibly even the EU, then we could see kind of move to the next leg up. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Do you think this upcoming week is going to be positive, negative? What's your general thoughts on SoFi? When it comes down to this debate, what stood out to you? I kind of tuned in and out back and forth, but what I did listen to, obviously I brought up, it was largely about perception, and I honestly do agree that any stock, not even SoFi, not even Robinhood, it is all about perception. And usually people care about the data and the metrics when obviously earnings hit. So at the time of earnings, then obviously analysts come out by, hey, they don't justify this multiple, or hey, this is a screaming buying opportunity right now. Up until after that, after a company does unveil their earnings, then it is all just speculation, all perception and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just my general thoughts. What's your viewpoint? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Hopefully everyone's having a good weekend. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon and get buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.